Hey everyone, this is Corey. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, I'll be reviewing two games I played against my dad on chess.com. These games are exciting and filled with attacking chess moves. If you enjoy the video and would like to see more, I would immensely appreciate your support if you click like on the video and subscribe to my channel. Every little bit helps. Let's go ahead and get started. Here we have our first game against my dad. I played the white pieces and I start things off with pawn to e4. My dad replies with pawn to e5 and I play knight f3. Black decides to go for the Philidor defense with d6, defending this pawn. I play pawn to d4, occupying the center and putting pressure on this pawn. Right now he only has one piece defending it, and I have two attackers. So black decides to address this by taking my pawn. I take back with my knight. He brings his knight out, and I bring my knight out. And I think I have a slight advantage here just because I have two pieces on some central squares, as well as a lead in development. Black plays pawn to b6 with the intention of fianchettoing the bishop. He wants control over this diagonal, and he wants to put pressure on this pawn. So if I don't do anything, black will play bishop here, and then he'll take the pawn. I only have one defender of this pawn. So in chess, it's generally a good idea to overprotect your potential weaknesses. So I put my bishop here to d3 to overprotect this pawn. And I do realize that while moving that bishop here helps protect this pawn, it also weakens this knight. Before, the queen was defending the square, but once I put the bishop here, it blocks in the queen's defense of this knight. So right now the knight is undefended, but I looked around the board and I saw that the only way that black can challenge that knight right now is by playing a move like c5. And that move is slightly weak because one, it opens up this diagonal, and two, it undefends this pawn. This is exactly what happened. Black played pawn to c5 to challenge that knight, but a lot of beginners at this point will simply move the knight away. They see a piece being under attack, so they instantly move it out of the way. They're afraid. You really have to look all around the board, and most specifically look for checks, captures, and threats. Well, there's one check that I can do here, and that's bishop to b5. Check. This will allow me to cramp up black's position. Black plays knight bd7, addressing the check, and I play knight f5. Now look what's happening here. I'm slowly infiltrating black's position, and now I have an immediate threat, and that's to take the pawn. Right now this pawn is attacked twice, and black only has one defender. By moving this knight here, it blocks the queen. This is a huge threat. I'm threatening to simply take the pawn. Black challenges my bishop. He says, okay, if you want to take the pawn, that's fine. I'll take your bishop. So I have to move the bishop out of the way. And the best square for me to do that would be right here, because it attacks the rook. The rook is now forced to move. And then once the rook moves, I'll take the pawn. But for some reason, black didn't see that I was attacking the rook, and he made a very quiet move, bishop e7, simply allowing me to capture the rook. Black castles, and then I take the pawn. Takes, and now I'm completely winning. The rest of the game ends in just a couple of moves. Rook e8 was played, which is a logical move, trying to gain a little bit of control over that open file. So I simply castle, and I intend on bringing my rook either to this square or this square, and black makes another mistake. So I don't think black realized that I have a bishop here defending this pawn as well as my knight. And he only has one piece supporting this attack. So takes, rook takes, and he simply loses the rook. And the game ends on the next turn. Black makes another blunder. He moves to f6, allowing me to simply take the queen for free while giving check, and his only move is to play the knight here, and I would take the queen. So he resigned on this turn. Here we have our second game and this time I had the black pieces. White starts things off by playing d4, and I respond with c6. Knight c3, and d5. Knight f3, knight f6. So this position is pretty much equal. We both are taking control over the center and bringing out our pieces. Bishop f4, which is a very good move. And I pretty much play the same thing. I play bishop f5. We both close off our bishops when they're outside of the pawn chain. So if our bishops were in these squares, and then we play pawn to e3 and pawn to e6, our bishops would be kind of bad pieces. But because we brought them out, we don't have to worry about them being stuck inside the pawn chain. Plays the move knight e5. The computer said it is the best move, but really I don't see a reason why this move needed to be played right now. You generally don't want to be moving the same piece twice, unless if you see a very concrete advantage of doing so. What he should have played rather was either bishop e2 or bishop d3, challenging the bishop, asking me if I want to trade or move it out of the way, and then castle. That would be the better plan. Instead, he played knight e5. I look around the board, I'm looking for weaknesses, and I do notice one right here. This pawn is currently undefended, so I challenge it. I play queen b6. He played this move, pawn to b3, but that move undefended the knight. So before, this pawn was supporting the knight, but once he moved it out of the way, this knight is now completely undefended. So the rest of the game will be me challenging this knight and winning based on that. So I look for tactics. I notice that the knight is on the same line as the king, so that means I can do a pin probably. If I can put a bishop or queen on one of these two squares, that knight will then be pinned. So I do that. I make the move bishop b4. Things are very, very uncomfortable for white. So there's, at this point, only one way to protect this knight, and that would be to move the queen down. He could obviously move his king here, but that just doesn't look good at all. And this is what he does. Queen d2. And now I have two really good options. I have either knight here or queen here. I go for queen here just because it's a battery. It adds another attacker to the king, and I slowly want to get close to it. Really, at this point, there's nothing white can do to protect this pin. He doesn't have any more pieces that can come to the defense, so white is just completely lost here. Pawn to e4, I take, and now the queen is lost. Now the queen is pinned to the king. Knight here. I don't take the queen right away. I take the pawn just so my bishop doesn't get captured later on. I could have taken the queen, but I didn't have to. Queen takes. I simply take the queen, and now I have a fork against the king and the rook. The knight blocks. I take the rook, and it's with check. The king really only has one move to go to, which is this square. He could also block, but I'll simply take the knight. King goes down, and now I'm just trying to attack the king for a checkmate. I play knight c3, check. King f3. I give another check, forcing the king to move again, so now he has two options. He can go here, or he can go here. This is a mate in 1. This is what happened in the game. Or he can go here. And this is technically like a mate in 14. I did not calculate it all the way through, but this position just does not look good at all. I would probably play something like queen here and then just simply develop my pieces like normal and attack. Maybe I'll play something like knight here, and simply attack the king and checkmate it somehow. I didn't calculate any lines, but it looks really good for me. But instead, white walked into a mate in 1, and that was the game. I hope you enjoyed those games and learned a thing or two from them. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful rest of your day.